the will to power and the snare of emotional dependence. Would you heed the counsel of a philosopher who grasped that the superior individual must forge their own values, yet warned of the most insidious trap capable of destroying even the freest spirit? Friedrich Nietzsche was more than a mere thinker. He was the hammer striking humanity's illusions, the architect of a philosophy demanding man become his own god, to sculpt his destiny free from external moral crutches. Yet, in his relentless dissection of the human condition, he pinpointed a vulnerability that even the most ironclad will to power could not circumvent if an individual lacked the necessary awareness. Today, over a century later, his warning might be the sole barrier preventing your descent into the very abyss of mediocrity he so scorned. In this account, you will uncover the true snare Friedrich Nietzsche identified within masculine psychology, the advice he offered men aspiring to greatness, and why even the Superman, Übermensch, can succumb to the forces now dragging thousands of men into decline. Listen closely, for the very weakness Nietzsche denounced might be eroding your potential right now. He wrote of God's demise, heralded the arrival of the Superman, challenged all established morality, and comprehended the female nature with brutal clarity. Nietzsche shone brighter than most thinkers in human history. When he began developing his philosophy, he inherited not just ideas, but the immense responsibility of rousing humanity from its moral slumber. He was young and ailing, but he chose a path few men dare to embrace. He sought inner strength, not external validation. His mind delighted in this quest, leading him to develop not only a revolutionary philosophy, but also a profound understanding of what genuinely fortifies or debilitates a man. Nietzsche became the most radical thinker of his era. His ideas were like pure gold, extracted from the depths of human thought, precious concepts forged in the furnace of intense reflection. Intellectuals of his time, encountering his writings, often fell silent. His words possessed the power to dismantle millennia-old certainties and construct new truths. He famously declared, "Not half of what man can become has yet been explored." Nietzsche epitomized the free thinker. He mastered his instincts, inspired minds, and led with intellectual purpose. He was a bastion of masculinity rooted in self-overcoming. He grasped something most men are still learning. He who masters his will, masters his fate. The will to power transcends brute force. Mental clarity outweighs superficial charisma. He was the kind of man who commanded intellectual respect before being fully understood, who exuded presence through his ideas, who walked with philosophical purpose, who carried a reflective silence. But when he wrote, none dared contradict him without robust arguments. Nietzsche, at his peak, was the embodiment of a man with the intellectual world in the palm of his hand, precisely because he first learned to conquer his own internal contradictions. This makes his warning even more potent. When a man lacking self-control self-destructs, it is predictable. But when a man with such mental clarity identifies a universal trap, it speaks volumes about the profoundness of the danger. The question that echoes is, how could a man with such focus, such mental architecture, and such wisdom identify the very trap that allows everything to unravel? The answer lies in what most men underestimate: emotional dependency disguised as love, the craving for validation, the desperate need to be desired. The type of woman you allow into your life can determine whether you ascend to Superman status or descend into emotional servitude. A man's downfall rarely occurs overnight. It begins silently, in minor concessions, in decisions that seem strategic but subtly weaken the will to power. Nietzsche observed how men started to seek feminine validation. Initially, it felt natural, a biological instinct, but each pursuit of approval brought its own chains, its own rituals of submission, its own demands for conformity. And the man, even the most intelligent, would begin to yield. He would start to permit external values to shape his own. He would allow other priorities to fragment his focus. He would listen more to others' expectations than to his own inner voice. The man who wrote, "Become who you are," was watching as men lost themselves, trying to become what others wished them to be. And here lies the critical insight Nietzsche identified. A man knew what was right for his development, but chose what was convenient for acceptance. And this, my friend, is what is destroying men today. It isn't a lack of knowledge, it's the choice to disregard what they already know. They know they shouldn't compromise their principles, and yet they do. A man falls not through ignorance, but through moral cowardice. This makes Nietzsche's warning even more tragic and profoundly relevant to us. And here is the key he identified. The man doesn't lose external power. He loses his internal will to power. A man can remain wealthy, acclaimed, and outwardly functional, yet be spiritually fractured. The issue was never having relationships. The problem was he became a prisoner of his relationships. His focus began to fracture. The man who once steered his own development now spent days trying to manage the desires of multiple validation sources. Women were not partners in purpose. They were luxurious distractions. He wasn't choosing women aligned with his vision of greatness. He was collecting experiences that fed his ego and drained his authentic will to power. How many men today live exactly this way? They may not have 1,000 women, but they juggle several open conversations on their phones, navigate unresolved entanglements, giving access to their time, peace, and energy to women who contribute nothing to their growth. Men who should be building empires are instead building expectations in women who don't even share their direction. Men who should be nurturing their bodies, minds, and spirits are spending hours seeking attention with online compliments, merely bolstering the women's egos. Do you know the real issue, my friend? It's not the woman. It's the man who has lost his discerning judgment. It's the man who trades his true path for trivial distractions, who confuses fleeting validation with genuine connection, who prioritizes transient desire and abandons his core mission. Such a man begins to drift from himself, and a man who abandons his self is already in free fall, even if he still stands tall. And here lies the profound insight Friedrich Nietzsche grasped. No matter how strong, intelligent, or gifted you may be, if you lose sight of your relentless self-overcoming, you lose everything. A man doesn't fall in an external battle. He isn't defeated by an invading army. He falls while slumbering with the enemies of his vital energy, women who don't comprehend his legacy, who disrespect his leadership, who praise him even as they subtly divert him from his path. And this is brutal to confront. A man can be applauded even as he self-destructs. For applause doesn't solely signal success. Sometimes it stems from sheer convenience. And the man who lives for being desired forgets what he came here to forge. This is precisely where countless modern men find themselves. Physically powerful, yet weak in discipline. Companions to many, but leaders of none. The man began transforming into a mere caricature of his former self. The man who once governed his own evolution was now governed by neediness, masquerading as affection. The right women inspire a man to ascend. The wrong women demand he shrink himself to be accepted. This was Nietzsche's observation. Men adapting, quieting their authentic selves, drifting from who they truly were to keep pleasing those who offered no genuine respect. And this dynamic is far more prevalent than it appears. How many men today are living diminished versions of themselves to sustain relationships that offer no elevation? How many are stifling their own growth to avoid threatening the one beside them? When a man isn't respected by the woman he's with, he begins to doubt his own worth. He adapts, He compromises, he retreats into silence, and there, he begins to die. Not in body, but in purpose. The downfall Nietzsche identified was emotional, psychological, spiritual. And like all invisible declines, it becomes visible far too late. You might not be a genius, you might not possess fame or fortune or 1,000 lovers, yet the trap Nietzsche pinpointed is still set, and you might be treading upon it right now. Today, the majority of men live precisely like those Nietzsche criticized in his later writings, distracted, diluted, and devoid of focus. Do you know what is truly eroding men, gentlemen? It isn't a lack of opportunities, it's a lack of authentic will to power. For when you lack a clear destination in terms of self-overcoming, any fleeting allure can derail you. You begin your day with grand intentions, but you end it exhausted, entangled in arguments, petty emotional games, waiting for responses that shouldn't even matter. Your energy, which could be fueling a project, a vision, a legacy, is instead being siphoned by trivial messages, digital affirmations, and transient whims. And here is the stark truth Friedrich Nietzsche understood. If you lack discerning judgment regarding who enters your emotional sphere, you will merely become another mediocre man. Intelligent, yes, talented indeed, but ultimately fallen, hollow. A king without a throne, a warrior without a cause, a man without direction. When does a man truly begin to lose his power? When he feels he must please to be accepted, when he believes he needs to retain a woman at any cost, when he inverts the natural order, ceasing to lead his own life to conform to the moods of someone who doesn't share his vision. And what follows? Insecurity, procrastination, self-doubt. For a man disconnected from his mission of self-overcoming is like a ship adrift. It has form, it has strength, but it lacks any true bearing. The right woman will amplify your mission toward greatness. The wrong one will draw you away from it. She will make you believe that peace means surrender, that love demands a renunciation of identity, that leadership is oppression. This is how Nietzsche observed the decline of men, surrounded by voices that offered no elevation, by women who seduced with beauty but absorbed their vital force. And this is how many men are living today, surrounded by stimulation but empty of true meaning, surrounded by options but lacking the courage to say no to what doesn't fortify their path to becoming the Übermensch. But what is the greatest lesson Nietzsche bestowed upon us? Choose with absolute discernment, rooted in the will to power. A woman can truly be your anchor or your wings. She possesses the capacity to ground you firmly or to pull you entirely off course. She can either amplify your grandest visions or leave you utterly blind. Should she fail to honor your drive for self-mastery, you'll find yourself shrinking, attempting to fit into her particular world. This is the very first whisper of the potential Superman's demise. The woman who genuinely fortifies your pursuit of excellence is, in the framework of Nietzsche's philosophy, truly invaluable. Never settle for anything less. As Friedrich Nietzsche himself declared, man must be overcome. That profound overcoming starts with meticulously selecting companions who elevate your will to power, rather than those who would seek to diminish it.